Okay, today we shall be talking about impulse response function that we shall be talking today, and impulse response function that we want to talk today. What does mean by impulse response function? What does it mean? The impulse response function is a shock to a var system. So that is the definition of the impulse response function. Then the second issue is the impulse response identify the responsiveness of the dependent variable, which is an endogenous variable in the var when a shock is put to the error term such as u1 and u2 at the equations given below. So this one is the also definition of meaning of impulse response function. Then we can define also in other way. Impulse response function is a unit shock is applied to each variable and see its effect on the var system. What does mean by var? var means vector auto regressive. Vector auto regressive. It means var, VAR system. Okay, note the following var system model. So here we have chosen one var model. You can see the first model, and it is the second model, and the whole thing actually called var system. The whole thing is called var system. And here you can see for the first one, money is the dependent variable and consumption with lag t minus 1 is independent variable, and money t minus I is also independent variable. Money with lag t minus I, that means some lag will be there. Lag period, t minus I means lag period. So those lag period we shall be using here in this particular var model, and consumptions is the another variable which is also endogenous variable, and money is the independent variable with t minus I lag period, and consumption is another independent variable with t minus I lag period, and u1 and u2 are the error term. u1 and u2 are actually called error term, or we can also call it innovation, or we can also call it impulses. u1 and u2 also called impulses or innovations or shock. So it has three names: innovations or impulses or shock. Shock. Okay, so the whole thing is vector autoregressive model. So what is happening here? A change in E1 will bring a change in money, and it will change consumption and also money during the next period. What does it mean? That means if there is a change in E1, what does mean by change? A shock. If there is a shock in E1, so this shock or change will affect money supply. So you can see money. Here money means money supply. So this money, this variable is already here, right? So this variable already here. So this one, this money lag period will affect consumption, and this consumption already here, right? And this consumption ultimately affect money supply. So what does mean? I am telling again, if there is a shock or change in E1, what is called E1? E1 is the impulses or innovations or shock. So if there is a shock in E1, that will affect money, and money will affect consumption, and consumption will affect again money. So that means a change in E1 will affect the whole VAR system. In the similar way, if a shock is given in U2, this shock will affect consumption, and you see that consumption is also here, right? This consumption will affect money supply, and you can see money supply is also here. So this one will ultimately affect consumptions. So meaning that a shock in U2 will affect the whole VAR system, and finally this U2 will affect consumptions. Okay, and in this example problem, what is our target? Our target, how the money supply affect consumptions, or whether consumption affect money supply. That we want to check, whether money supply can affect consumption or consumption can affect money supply. For how long? How long money supply can affect consumption, or how long consumption can affect money supply, or in what manner? In what manner money supply can affect consumption and consumption can affect money supply if there is a shock in U1 and U2. That we want to check today. Okay, so we give a shock to the innovation or residual that is on U1 and U2 of the above var model to see how it affects the whole var system. Okay, I'm saying again, so we give a shock to the innovation or residual that is on U1 and U2 of the above var model to see how it affects the whole var system model. Okay. Okay, but for calculating the impulse response, the ordering of the variable is important. That means how to ordering the variables, that is very important. Many methods are given for ordering, but here we have chosen Cholesky's adjusted method as given in EViews. So here we shall be using Cholesky's adjusted model as given in EViews for setting the ordering of the variables. Okay. And in our problem we have only two variables, they are money supply and consumptions. Okay, what we have done here, we have given a positive shock of 1 standard deviation to U1 and U2 in the above var model to see the reaction of the variables. I am saying again, what we have done here, we have given a positive shock of 1 standard deviation to U1 and U2 in the above var model to see the reactions of the variables. Meaning that what we have done here, we have done 1 standard deviation shock, 1 standard deviation positive shock to U1 to see how it reacts to variables. Or in other way, we have also given shock, 1 standard deviation shock to U2 here to check how the consumptions and money react to each other, how they react to each other. So that we want to check after giving 1 standard deviation shock. That is our plan to check finally. Then we can apply this impulse response in both var. var means I'm telling again, we can apply this impulse response in both var, that means unrestricted var, and VCM, which is restricted var, to see the reaction of all variables. That means we can apply this impulse response in both restricted var and unrestricted var to check the reaction of all variables. And here we have assumed that all the variables are endogenous. That means our money supply and consumptions both are endogenous. Or actually, what is our target? Our target, uh, if there is a shock, one standard deviation shock in U1 or one standard deviation shock in U2, how the variables are reacting to each other, in what manner they are reacting to each other, that we shall be uh, we shall be uh, discussing today using EViews. Okay, so today we shall be developing impulse response function under vector autoregressive environment. So that is our task. And suppose we have two endogenous variable. One is consumption and money. So I am opening both the variables as a group. So this is the our data, consumption and money. The data start from 1981 month 1. So this one is the monthly data from 1981 to, I'm going down gradually. So going down gradually, you can see the data is ended in the year of 2009. monthly data. So, and we shall be developing the impulse response function under vector autoregressive environment or var model. Okay, what I do, how to develop the var model. I click on the quick, then estimate var, okay, and I put the endogenous variables such as money. Here money means money supply, then consumption. Okay. So these are my two endogenous variables. And suppose I choose 8 lakhs. There are total 8 lakhs, and this one is the our sample period from 1981 to 2009 sample period. And here the var type, actually var is two type. One is unrestricted var, and the second one we call it restricted var. So vector error correction model actually called restricted var. So suppose our two variables such as money supply and consumption both are co-integrated. Both are co-integrated by one error term or one co-integrating equation. Suppose we assume that we need one co-integrating equation to make the system equilibrium. So there is one co-integrating equation. So I go to VCM, which is called restricted var. I choose this one, right? And I have taken 8 variables, and co-integration, how many? It is already 1, so we are happy about it. And here I choose 3, which is already given. So now we can run the vector error correction model having one co-integrating equation. Okay, then I press OK. So this one is the vector error correction estimate, and this one is the one co-integrating equations, and this is my models are coming up. This is the dependent variable, right? Money supply and consumption, and we have chosen 8 lakhs. All lakhs are here, right? All lakhs are coming up. So this one is my vector error correction models. Okay, and we assume that this model has fulfilled all the assumptions of the regression line, meaning that this VECM model, there is no serial correlation, and the residuals are normally distributed, and so on. So this model suppose perfect, then we can run the impulse response functions, provided the model is alright statistically. Then we can check the impulse response function. So here is the icon, you can see, right? I click here in the icon. Okay, then you can see impulses and responses. So it is like this. And periods, suppose I choose 8 periods. 8 periods in the future, or I can call it 8 months, because our data are in monthly. Suppose I choose 8, but of course we can choose uh, we can choose more than 8, but suppose I choose 8 into the future, 8 month into the future, because our data is monthly. And this is the impulses and this is the responses. So that means impulses means which will give a shock, and responses means how this variable will be reacting when there is a shock from money supply and consumption. Okay, here how to ordering the variables, that is a very important thing. How to ordering variables. There are many ways you can order variables, such as you click here impulse definition. You can see there are many ways, right? Many ways, many options are here. Out of many options, I choose Cholesky Dov adjusted, but you can choose other method also, but I choose here Cholesky Dov adjusted, right, to set my ordering of variables. Then here you can see you can user specified. You can also set your own ordering. That is also possible. It is also possible. You can set the ordering, but I have chosen this one, Cholesky Dov adjusted. Okay, then I press OK. So this is the outcome of the results, right? You can see from here the outcome of the whole things, right? So response to Cholesky, 1 standard deviation innovation. Here innovation means actually residuals or impulses or shock, right? That is called innovation. Innovation can be error term also. Okay, so first I talk about these two, then I talk about these two. Okay, so this line means 0. So when I go up, that is positive, and when I go below of it, that is negative. And here I have chosen, you see, 8 months, 8 months into the future. That is the things. Okay, here I am saying response of money to money. That means what is the reaction of money to money? What does it mean? It means that if I give a shock of 1 standard deviation to money supply, I am telling again, if I give a shock, positive shock of 1 standard deviation to money supply, how the money supply will be reacting. That means money supply reacting to its own, right? It is reacting to its own. How? You can see the blue line. So blue line is the reaction. So reaction is, it is gradually going down, and eventually become 0, but not negative. That means after 8 months, it becomes 0. That means reaction becomes 0 after 8 months. Okay, but here response of money to consumption, meaning that if I give one standard deviation shock, positive shock to consumption, money supply will go down. You can see from here. Money supply will go down if I give one standard deviation shock, positive shock. Money supply will go down, you see. Okay, or you can say into future until 8 months money supply will be negative. That means consumption and money supply has a negative effect, negative association, right? Negative impact. If consumption goes up, then money supply will be reacting negatively. And here response of here is what? Response of consumption to money supply. Here what is happening? If I give one standard deviation positive shock to money supply, consumption will be initially positive, then after 3 months it becomes negative, again positive, then after 5 months it will be negative. That means sometime positive, sometime negative, right? That means when there is a shock in money supply, then consumption sometime positive, sometime negative. What about the last one? Response of consumption to consumption. That means reacting to its own, eventually reacting to its own. One standard deviation shock to consumption, the consumption will go down, but it becomes steady. It becomes steady until 8 period. But it has not been negative in no time, right? It is always positive, because this blue line is above this zero line. What does mean by zero line? So at zero line means if we go up it is positive response, if we go down it is negative response. So in that way we can interpret the results into next 8 months. But of course we can take more months, but here I have taken only 8 months. So that is the outcomes of this impulse response function under vector error correction model.